What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plaisance Podcast. In this episode, I will be talking about the college football playoffs with my good friends Cameron and Carton from the Saturdays in the SEC podcast. Be sure to go check them out. The link is in the description. They have a great channel, and they know more about the SEC than anyone I've ever met. So stay tuned for this episode. Be sure to look at our other ones as well. And thanks again for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Texas, were they snubbed? Cameron, you're up. I need to hear what your thoughts are initially.
No, I don't think they were snubbed. I see their case perfectly clear. I mean, they had a group of wins that was about as good as anybody in the country. I think if you want to get down to it, if we were just picking the best 12, I think there's a very strong chance that Texas is in there, particularly the way they played down the stretch. They kind of really found their stride. So, if we were just taking best 12, then I think there's a very good chance they would have found themselves in there or even had a better case to be in there. But obviously under the current format with the 5 conference champions, we know we're going to have at least one group of 5. This year we have 2 with the way the ACC floundered around at the end of the season. So, under this format, no, they didn't get snubbed. I mean, there was other teams that were I guess had a little bit better case, but no, if you just put it on me like, hey, straight up, are they one of the best 12? Yeah, they probably are. I would have them that 11-12 spot probably if I was just taking best 12. I would like to see them in it just from an entertainment standpoint and the way they're playing. But no, under the current format, no, I don't think they did. But I certainly get the case though.
I also don't think.
I was going to say I figured you'd think the same thing, right?
Like Cam said, in this current format, absolutely not. They were not snubbed. They lost to a 4-win Florida team. They struggled, had to go to overtime with Kentucky, had to have a late comeback win against Mississippi State, which they ended up winning those games, so a win's a win. But away from Austin, this team was a completely different team. If you could tell me that you're going to put them in the playoffs and every game was going to be played in Austin, yeah, for sure, they're the national champions. But they're not. Like, away from their home stadium, they were a completely different ball team, which, again, I know they still had 9 wins, whatever. I don't think a 3-loss team's that's third loss didn't come in the conference championship should be in. They have no excuse. They're saying, well, we're not going to schedule Ohio State. We're not going to schedule any hard non-cons. That's not the reason that they're not in. If they would have beat Florida, they'd be sitting at the table. But, however, they didn't beat Florida, so they're not. And, again, they were not good away from home. They were not the same team away from home. So I don't think in any way, shape, or form that they got snubbed at all.
I completely agree with both of you guys. First of all, out of all of the teams that quote unquote are in the snubbed category, Texas, Notre Dame, BYU, Vanderbilt, I think Texas probably has the weakest argument just because of that loss to Florida. But I will say, I don't know how you guys feel about it, so I kind of want to get your opinions about it. The non-conference scheduling, right? You go on the road, you play Ohio State, you lose in a close game, obviously early on. Like you said, Texas on the road, nowhere near the same. But do you think that now that's kind of whether or not it's true, do you think that's the narrative in college football? I'll start with you, Carton. Is that the narrative in college football that like you shouldn't schedule tough teams in your non-conference because you're going to get punished if you lose and not really rewarded if you win?
I think that it's probably going to go that way, but not because of you're not rewarded for a win or a loss or whatever. It's because the SEC, mainly for the SEC, but it's because they're going to a 9-game conference schedule.
Yes.
That is going to change things. Kirby Smart laid it out perfect. It's 8 more losses for the conference. So you have a potential one more time that you can lose, and then you go play another big out of conference and just say you lose it just like Texas did this year against Ohio State. Yeah, it was a great game. It was a close game, 14-7. So they played great defensively, on the road. But with there being a chance to have another loss because you're adding a conference game, I think that it's going to trend that way where teams, especially in the Big Ten and the SEC, are not going to schedule big name out of conference games because of that, because you have a chance to have one more loss. So as much as I hate to say it, it's probably going to trend that way, but just because they're adding another conference game. If it was staying at 8 conference games for the SEC, I don't think it would go anywhere. I think they would still schedule these because, again, they're not left out because they lost to Ohio State. They're left out because they lost to Florida.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think, like I said, I think adding the other conference game, now both the SEC and the Big Ten being at 9, I think you're seeing some of these, maybe some of the bigger out-of-conference game being canceled and adding, a lesser group of 5 or FCS opponent. Like I said, because you've got another real chance for a loss now. You don't want to take that in non-conference play. And I think, too, part of it as well is it doesn't feel like the committee is still weighing strength of schedule as heavily as they need to, or at least as heavily as they said they were going to, because they were like, hey, we're going to start, this year in particular, we're going to start weighing strength of schedule heavier. And for now, at the end, they ended up flipping Miami and Notre Dame, and that head-to-head in their eyes ended up coming into play. But for a majority of the rankings, it didn't feel like – it just felt like it was just off the win-loss record for the most part. Now, I mean, obviously the teams with the higher strength of schedule, if you were – you had 2 losses, but you had a higher strength schedule, you be the top-ranked 2-loss team and all that. And there were certain instances where they were, but I still don't think it's being weighed heavily enough. And I think that's also another reason for teams like, well, if it's just about limiting our loss column, like let's just schedule somebody a little bit weaker and not put ourselves in that position. And like Corden said, with it going to a 9th game, that's just another factor to add on to that to make you think, well, let me schedule a little bit. Our conference schedule's tough enough as it is. Let me just get through non-conference unscathed and try to keep my loss column as low as I possibly can. So I would like to see the committee continue to weigh strength of schedule a little bit higher than they have in the past couple seasons.
And for anybody saying that the SEC's schedule is not tough, I mean, look at South Carolina. They were a 3-win team. They took Texas A&M down to the wire. They took Alabama down to the wire. They had several games where they were in it till the very end. They just couldn't get over the hump. The 16th or 15th, 16th team in the Big Ten, or the 17th, 18th team in the Big Ten, is not taking Indiana or Ohio State or Oregon down to the wire like that consistently week in and week out, the way South Carolina did, the way Missouri did, which Missouri was a top tier of the SEC. But the middle of the pack in the SEC is so much better than the middle of the pack in any other conference. And even the bottom tier schools in the SEC are so much better than every other conference. Obviously, we're biased because we're SEC fans, but the people that try and argue that it's not, they clearly are not watching the ball.
They don't know ball. Yeah. Well, I feel the same way.
And here's the thing too. It's you talk about a team like a South Carolina, and the difference between a team like South Carolina that was a bottom tier team in the SEC this year versus some of the bottom tier teams of the Big Ten is South Carolina still got Sunday guys. Dylan Stewart's coming off that edge for South Carolina. Rutgers doesn't have a Dylan Stewart. Northwestern does have a Dylan Stewart. Yeah. Like, that's the difference between the SEC and even some of the Big Ten and some of the other conferences. It's like even your bottom tier teams from each individual year, that they're still littered with Sunday players. Like, they're still littered with guys that are really good talents. And I just think from top to bottom, there's just not much of a comparison to the other conferences. And, one point I'll make before we move on real quick is during the debate, before the last, unveiling of the selection show, all the national media was trying to hate on Alabama, the way they played down the stretch. And they didn't play as good, but they were like, well, they struggled with a 5-7 Auburn team and all like that. And they were using that as a negative on Alabama's resume. And I was like, do we not remember Georgia barely squeaking out of Jordan-Hare too? Do we not remember Texas A&M barely getting out at home against it? Like, Auburn won one conference game. They only lost by one possession to everybody they played. Like, nobody beat them by more than one possession. So I think Georgia ended up beating them by 10. So it's like, yeah. So, I mean, it was like, and we know how that game went with some of the calls in the first half and all that. Like, they were an inch away from being down, or maybe not even an inch away from being down 17-0 in that game. So it's like, I just thought it was funny. Everybody was using that as a negative to Alabama, but it was like they were overlooking how competitive Auburn was in even being 5-7. how good they were and how competitive they were in every single game.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's of my opinion. We're going to get into this in another episode, guys. Go check out our college football layout episode. But I think the fact that we have human beings doing this is a mistake. Now, that's that might be a hot take, but they cannot watch all of these games. I guarantee you, if you asked 13 members, right, for the playoff committee, if you asked 13 of them to tell you about Keldrick Falk, they would just look at you like they didn't even know who that was. Yeah, obviously we're SEC guys, so we're also from Alabama, so we are a little biased. We know who Keldrick Falk is, but at the top of the totem pole here, deciding a playoff team, are you watching Auburn football games? No. Why? Because they're not playoff relevant. So you have no idea who's on this roster. Whereas, when you think about a 5-7 Purdue, a 5-7 Auburn, they must be of equal caliber. They're not. As much as I would love for the Boilermakers to have some cream of the crop NFL talent, they don't. So my thoughts on Texas before we close this out was I absolutely think that the narrative going forward, Steve Sarkisian said it over and over again. Well, if we just didn't do Ohio State, we'd be 10-2 and in the playoffs. I actually agree with the sentiment because I think about Alabama, 10-2. They lost to it was either 4-8 or a 5-7 Florida State, right? But nobody really talks about that because it was beginning of the season, right? I think 10-2 Texas gets in, especially with the way they played against A&M. Now on the road at home, that's a big time argument, but I disagree with the sentiment. I think scheduling tough opponents is the reason that you end up getting in the playoffs. Prime example is Texas just 2 years ago in 2023. Before they were in the SEC, right? They scheduled those tough games versus Alabama. They go on the road, Quinn Ewers, and lays the pipe down on Alabama, and they go to the playoffs that year. Maybe they don't if they don't schedule that tough game, right? Those are just my thoughts on Texas. I think the fan base has a right to be a little upset, but in terms of the national conversation, there's just no way that you are a top 10 team right now. And that's the problem. Go check out our college football playoff layout video because you might see me turn as red as the jersey behind me.